Right, so let's continue solving equations. So for number 7, just like number 6, I need to take the square root of both sides. And I get cosine of theta equals plus or minus the square root of 3/4. I've got to remember the plus or minus because I put in the square root sign. And then I have to think about simplifying this. I don't know what the square root of 3 is, but I do know what the square root of 4 is. It's 2. And then, in order to find theta, I take the inverse cosine. So theta is wherever the cosine is plus or minus the square root of 3/2. So anywhere where the x-coordinate is the square root of 3/2, whether it's positive or negative. So I go to my unit circle. Right there, square root of 3/2, which means it's going to be on all my yellows. Pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, 7 pi over 6, 11 pi over 6. All of my pi over 6 family. So theta equals pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, 7 pi over 6, and 11 pi over 6. Great, let's go to number 8. Number 8, again, sine squared, so I've got to take the square root. And since I took a square root, that means it's going to be plus or minus the square root of 1/4. And then I look to see if I can simplify that. Sine of theta equals plus or minus the square root of 1 is 1. The square root of 4 is 2. Take the inverse of each side. Oops. Theta equals the inverse sine of plus or minus 1/2. So I need to look for all the places on my unit circle where the y-coordinate, sorry, I'm just straighten this up a little bit, where the y-coordinate is 1/2, whether it's plus or minus. I'm looking for y-coordinates that are 1/2. So I go to my unit circle, y-coordinates. Well, look right here. It's at pi over 6, which means it's going to be at all my yellows, which are my pi over 6s, negative 1/2, negative 1/2. So, same answer as number 7. Theta is pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, 7 pi over 6, and 11 pi over 6. There's no shorter way, sorry, wasn't showing you that. There's no shorter way to write this. You have to include all 4 answers. All right, let's go to number 9. This one I don't want to take the square root of yet. I need to add 1 to both sides first, so I've got an extra step there. Cosine squared of theta equals 1. Now I'm ready to take the square root. And I have to remember that when I take the square root, I get a plus or a minus. And I know what the square root of 1 is. It's 1. Which means I'm going to now take the inverse cosine. So theta equals the inverse cosine of plus or minus 1. So I am looking on my unit circle for x-coordinates of 1, whether they're plus or minus. So I'm going to go to my unit circle. I want x-coordinates of 1. I've got 1 here, and I've got a negative 1 here. Now, this one you have to be careful, because this point here has 2 names, 0 and 2 pi, and this one has 1 name, pi. So we have 3 answers. 0 and 2 pi are 2 of the answers, and then pi is the 3rd answer. Sorry, I keep putting that below where the video is. So theta is 0 or 2 pi, that's on the right-hand side of the unit circle, or pi. I'm going to show you that again just to make sure you understand. So right here, where there's a 1, is both 0 and 2 pi. And then over here, where there's a -1, we have pi, which is why I have all 3 answers. All right. So this next section, where we're finding approximate solutions and we get to use our calculator, believe it or not, these are the more challenging ones. When you can just look for the answers on the unit circle, they seem much more obvious. So I'm just letting you know, this section, you'll have one like this on a quiz, you'll have one like this on your test, but I just need you to know that you want to really make sure you're paying attention. If you were kind of not really paying attention for a little bit, you got to focus back in. So the first step in these, where we aren't just looking at our unit circle and getting exact values, the first thing that we have to do is determine which quadrants our answers will be in. It's the first thing you have to do. So cosine is 0.8. Because cosine is positive, cosine is positive here and here, which means I'm going to have an answer that goes here, but then I'm also going to need to have an answer that goes here. I need both, because it says between 0 and 2 pi. And because it says between 0 and 2 pi, I need to make sure right now that my calculator, I'm going to turn my calculator on, go to mode, and I need to move my calculator to radians so that it's ready to go. All right. So on this first one, I just need to take the inverse of each side. And I get that theta equals the inverse cosine of 0.8. Easy enough. Put that in my calculator, inverse cosine of 0.8. And I get 0.6435. Okay. So this answer right here, 0.6435, I've got to think to myself, where is that going to be? Well, in order to know that, I'm going to draw a little picture up here of the unit circle. This is 0. Now these are going to be approximations. This is pi over 2. What is that? Pi over 2 is 1.57, approximately 1.57. This is pi, which is approximately 3.14. This is 3 and a half, well, 1.5, 3 halves pi. So 1.5 times pi, 4.71. And 2 pi is approximately 6.28. So because of that, I know that the 0.6435 must be right here in this quadrant. But now what I need to do is figure out, well, what's going to be right here? Well, right here is 2 pi. Right here is 2 pi, which is 6.28. And I'm going backwards in the negative direction, 0.6435. So I'm moving this direction. So this is going to be 6.28, as if I've gone all the way around the circle, and subtract the 0.6435. Now, if I want to be exact, I should say 2 pi minus 0.6435. And I get 5.6397. 5.6397. Because for the fourth quadrant answer, I was at 6.28 and I'm subtracting going backwards, so it's a little bit less than 6.28, and that makes sense. So these are my two answers. Let's go to number 2. I've got to first subtract 5 from each side, and I get 2 times the tangent of theta equals 3. I divide both sides by 2, and I get that the tangent of theta equals 1.5. As soon as I'm at this point, tangent is positive. Where is tangent positive? That would be in this quadrant and this quadrant. So 0, 1.57, 3.14, 4.71, 6.28. And now what I need to figure out is I need to figure out what theta is. So I take the inverse of each side. Theta equals the inverse tangent of 1.5. So let's see what that is. Inverse tangent of 1.5. And I get 0.9828. So theta equals 0.9828. That answer must be here. And remember, when you go diagonally across the straight line, you're adding pi. So to get this answer, it's going to be pi plus 0.9828. I don't know why I wrote 29. It was 9828. Sorry about that. Because I went across a straight line, that's adding pi. So pi plus 0.9828. Pi plus 0.9828. 4.1244. So those are my two answers. 4.1244. A lot of people like to put the answers right in here into the little circles because it reminds them that they have to fill in both answers. So they like to just put the answers directly in those circles, and it helps them to remember that. All right, let's see if we can get through number 3. I'm going to take the inverse of each side. Inverse sine. So theta equals inverse sine of negative 1/4. Well, I've got to remember sine is negative, which means both of my answers are going to be down here. So I'm going to have a third quadrant answer and a fourth quadrant. So go to my calculator, inverse sine negative 0.25, that's negative 1/4, and I get negative 0.2527. Theta equals negative 0.2527. The only problem with that answer is my answers have to be between 0 and 6.28. So I need to figure out what this is. This one is actually 6.28 going this direction, 6.28 minus 0.2527, and that'll give me my quadrant 4. And this one is going to be pi, which is approximately 3.14, and add the 0.2527, and that will give me my quadrant 3 answer.